You're a good blur. How do you like that?
All
Anyway.
right. Well, welcome to the Real Wellness Podcast. I am so excited for my guest today, who I happened to do a webinar with earlier today. So I get to see her twice today.
Yeah.
But this is the Real Wellness Podcast. It is live and unscripted. So who knows what will happen? My Great Dane Mastiff might bark or wind up on my lap, but that's all right. But this podcast is really dedicated to interviewing people that I believe are living an authentic, purposeful life, who have overcome a lot of obstacles and are living into real wellness. So they're living with, they've been through a lot and they are still taking care of themselves. They're showing up for themselves, but also showing up for others in a real way. So I'm going to read Julie's bio and we're going to jump right in. If you're joining us, say hello. And if you're seeing this on a replay, let us know. Okay. Julie Freeman. See, do you have a dog in the background, Julie?
I do. I have Zoe, who's a Maltipoo.
Oh, well, we want to see the dog. So, okay. Julie Freeman is a licensed integrative nutritionist, certified functional medicine provider with many graduate certificates. She has over 45 years of experience in the field of nutrition, counseling, genomics, energy medicine, and health promotions, with a passion for supporting and partnering with people in all stages of life, especially women facing midlife challenges. She is a certified mind and body medicine, which I love, yoga, Reiki, and sees benefits of using the best of both worlds, both conventional and cutting edge / ancient practices. She has authored 3 cookbooks and has a talent for creating delicious, healthy, and appealing meals. Her 4th book, Sunflowers, Sapphires, and Seraphim, is her personal story of transformation. So welcome, Julie.
Thank you. So great to be here again, Jess.
I know. Well, Julie, I want to hear first about your book. And I know when we presented together a few weeks ago, someone's like, what is Seraphim? So let's just talk about your 4th book, what it was like writing that and sharing your own story. So let's start there.
Yeah. I love to write, first of all, and I need to find some more time to do that again. But life, I would say the road less traveled, have really had so many different challenges that I've experienced. And so I wanted to really highlight each of those times in my life from birth until the present, and share those experiences as a way of helping other people to feel empowered that they can overcome obstacles in life. So super, super connected to my spirituality, which is part of the name of the book. So sunflower is my patron flower. And what's interesting is I was named after my mother's favorite nun, Sister Julie Billiart. And then my girls went to St. John's in Wellesley, Massachusetts. The principal there was Sister Julie McDonough. And the patron flower of the Sisters of Notre Dame is a sunflower. And the sunflower basically faces God. So that's basically one of the spiritual undertones of sunflowers. And I have loved sunflowers for all of my life. Sapphire is my September birth date. And I love cobalt blue and sapphire blue. Blue is about being connected between this world and the heavens. So it's, again, that ability to live in both places. And I feel that I do. I feel that I live here in this earth, but I'm really of the other world as well. And then Seraphim is all about angels. And so I can definitely feel when I'm getting the messages that I need to share with other people that are, deeply embedded in my spirituality. Oh my God.
Yeah, there he is.
And there's Zoe.
Okay. I love all of that. And first of all, Julie, have you been to the sunflower fields at Dix Park?
No.
Okay. Next week it peaks. So next week, do yourself a favor, go to the sunflower fields. If anyone's local to Raleigh area, it is beautiful. And you'll just see tons of people taking pictures and picnicking, and it's just gorgeous. So you definitely need to check that out. And then I did not know that about blue. And what's so interesting is that is my branding colors, but also just the fact that that's a connection makes me feel even better because that's my favorite color. So, and then of course, angels. So Julie, maybe you can share a little bit more about, I don't want to say your upbringing, which is funny because I grew up Catholic with the nuns, but maybe some of the challenge that you personally face. I have heard you share them, but obviously our audience has, so you can inspire them just through what you've been through and now where you're at.
Yeah. So only child, grew up in a very dysfunctional family, not unlike very many people, although, again, beautiful parents as well. But definitely faced the challenges of being an only child. And my dad was extremely strict, very, very chaotic in his behavior. I was very afraid of him. And as I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago when we were speaking together, I had all kinds of hormonal issues. I had all kinds of allergy issues and things like that. So lots of challenges on the health front. But my dad was unable to really even entertain any questions around sexuality, female sexuality, et cetera. And I had all kinds of hormone issues. I was in the hospital at age 15 for a major surgery and was basically ignored for quite a long time afterwards. And so, as a budding adolescent who had been on all kinds of different hormones and then in for surgeries and whatnot, gaining weight, losing weight, feeling like a crazy person, and then to be alienated by my dad was really hard. And so it's taken a lot of years of sort of like understanding a little bit about where he came from and his challenges. So that was one thing. Went on to develop infertility issues, had a very late miscarriage with twins at about close to 27 weeks. And that was definitely a very painful experience as well. My husband, unfortunately, had sort of a masked, unfortunate bipolar. And so when my daughter was finally born after I went through fertility challenges, he became psychotic. And that was a very, very scary time. So did my very best to try to make that marriage work and obviously needed to leave it. And lived with the keys in one hand and the phone in the other for quite a long time because he was a very, very erratic, a very scary person. And he's since passed away, and I have since been able to really have a better understanding of the fact that he was diagnosed very late in life with his bipolar, but his psychosis came out, when we were together. So my second husband had a very freak anoxic brain injury. He had a cardiac challenge that caused anoxia to his brain. And so he was brain dead for long enough that it caused his body to shrivel up, his brain to shrivel up. And he lived in and out of institutions for about 4 years before he passed away. And that was my second daughter who had been born. Second daughter, unfortunately, developed many of the mental health characteristics that were on that side of the family, and has been estranged from the family despite my best efforts to try to make sure that she would be safe and well. So I don't even know if my daughter's alive or not. Her birthday's coming up later this month, and I'm already sort of preparing emotionally for that challenge. But mental health challenges have followed me through life, and I think, as I mentioned when we were speaking a few weeks ago, that I've always been the strong one in the family and the one that people would come to. So, we get in our lives oftentimes the things that are extremely challenging, but it also offers us opportunity to stay with it and also to recognize that there's going to be some type of gift that we can give to others.
Oh, that's so good. Thank you for sharing all that, Julie. And I know that's probably not always easy to share or to go back to those times in life. And I always say everyone has a cross to bear, and some are heavier than others. But I wanted to touch on, for those women that might be in a relationship with a spouse or even a partner, and it's abusive in some way, or their spouse or partner has mental health issues. What gave you the power and the courage to say, this isn't healthy for me or safe anymore for me or my daughters?
What's really interesting is, and again, having grown up, Christian Catholic, I would say that I'm a much more open spiritual Christian Catholic. And having grown up in the Boston area, there was a lot of Jesuit and Franciscan influence, which is definitely much more open in terms of their spiritual nature. My priest friend said to me, he said, Julie, this is a toxic environment for you. You need to leave that. So that was one, and you don't normally hear that from a priest. And by the time I did recognize that I needed to leave that marriage, because it was, again, a very, very frightening and scary time for myself and for my daughter, my attorney was a wonderful person. He said, Julie, you need to go to the domestic violence support group. And I said, but I've never been hit. This is actually hitting a chord right now, but I said, I've never been hit. I don't have bruises. He said, oftentimes the worst bruises are the ones that you can't see. And so I have gone through life, Jess, frequently with not frequently, but always with a smile, always with an open heart. but also recognizing that there's been so many wounds that I've had to heal over the years and continue on that path.
Yeah, that's so powerful, Julie. And yeah, I'm sure it's very emotional to think about these things, and the whole domestic violence, like you said, it's not just physical violence. I have friends who I believe are being emotionally and mentally abused. And I think because there's not the physical abuse, they feel like they're not justified in leaving the marriage, or they
Absolutely.
feel like they're failing. And we had no idea how this conversation was going to go, but I always feel like the person that needs to see this will. And so I commend you for being that brave, and then you go on to marry someone who winds up, passing from a devastating disease or illness or whatever might have been. So you've been through an awful lot. Also, you mentioned your exchange from your daughter, and I think this is a really more of a common theme nowadays. I hear from a lot of parents that it seems like there's children that are just kind of leaving the family because either they have a dispute or for whatever reason. And I just talked to a friend about this the other day, and it's confusing. So how do you navigate that, and just having faith that it is what it's going to be?
Yeah, yeah. And we were a very tight family. My daughter from my first marriage, Ashley from my second marriage, and myself, and we were, very, very close. And she did have mental health issues from pretty much from day one. And I always had her in therapy. I hold an open heart that she hopefully is still alive. And I always, again, I hold that space that, she knows that she is loved, no matter what road she has taken. And, whether or not she's on Facebook or social media, and I have somewhat of a love hate relationship when it comes to social media. But around her birthday, I will always post some pictures and say, Ashley, I love you. I will always love you, and would love to hear your pain. Because again, I'm here to learn what her experience was being with me. Because again, none of us come into this world as perfect parents, as perfect people. And one of the things that I am very grateful for in terms of my own personality is always being open to learning how I can do better. Where's my blind spot? How can I possibly transform that?
I think we all need to be aware of that. And I always think about as parents, I have 4 children, one's passed, but knowing that I'm imperfect and sometimes the kids have to call us out, on our crap. And I think that's really significant because there is no blueprint for this. We learn as we go, we do the best we can, but also as a mom, as a woman, I'm also a person. And so I have to remind my kids that I'm not just mom. Like I have my own dreams and goals. And I think for so many women, they get caught up in the mom role and they forget, especially when your kids are grown and you have an empty nest, that you still have hopefully a whole life ahead of you. So you need to be fostering your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and social health. So let's move into that topic, Julie, because I know this is where both of us we dig in, we thrive, we learn, we grow. And I've learned so much already from you. But what would you say to a woman who is really not taking very good care of herself? She's kind of neglected her health because she's been taking care of everyone else. What would be the first step you could say to maybe showing up for yourself a little better?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is also, again, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, is taking some quiet time to really do that internal inventory. There's a beautiful book that goes into a discernment, and really, again, taking that quiet time to say, what are the things that, that really light my life? And I oftentimes bring women back, what did you like to do when you were a kid? Like for me, I love to ride my bike. I have an ancient bicycle, but I love to get out there on my bike and I feel like I'm free. So I really try to look back at what are the things that you originally enjoyed when you were a child? What are the things that, and again, we talked about other hungers, what are the things that you really hunger for? And are you on your path? And I think that again, for women, being able to slow down and actually take that inventory about the things that are really filling them up versus depleting them are really important. And especially because we are living longer, we have so much to offer. I was just actually speaking with a client before this. He said, my parents just said I'm old. And I said, unfortunately, ageism is something that happens in this country a lot. But really, age is about the ability to grow in wisdom. And as we age, we have that opportunity to share the lessons and all the beauty and the challenges with the younger generations. So I think that's an important piece. And women are the ones that need to do that.
Yeah, because we lead
Yeah.
by example. But you touched on part of my real framework, which is energy, which is E, like what are we using to fill us up and what are the things depleting us. But you also talked about something that when I meet with clients and I ask them, what are you doing for joy each weekend? What do you do that makes you happy? Oftentimes they don't know. And I am like dumbfounded by that because I think of like all the things I love to do. So let's go back to your childhood. What are the things you enjoyed? How about like your creativity part of your life? What do you like to create? And that might not be like art, but it could be music, it could be dance, it could be lots of different forms. But it's really interesting when I talk to people and they have no clue what lights them up because they've lived in robot mode,
Yep.
one foot in front of the other, survival, which there's seasons in life for that. I know that because I lived there for a long time. But at this point, it's like we know all these things about health now. It's in the forefront. And there's still so many people that are neglecting their health. And you touch more on like the overall, like stopping to be aware, like thinking about what you need. But as far as physical health, Julie, where could someone start if they feel like something's not right with their body? They don't feel well. I mean, I don't know how many people are walking around feeling like crap. So where could they start to say, you know what, I need to start paying attention to my physical being?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think the first place we have to start with is making sure that we're getting adequate sleep. And if we're scrolling on the phone, I can't tell you how often I'm having people say, okay, we need to stop scrolling on the phone. Partly because when we're scrolling on the phone, we're also doing all these comparisons. Oh, look at them doing that. They're doing that. I'm doing nothing. So again, there's a lot of comparison that goes on there. So that's actually something that's not really good. When we have good sleep, we have the ability to be able to think. We also have the ability to really be able to feel. And I think the other piece of it is getting out for that, 10 minutes of sunshine first thing in the morning. So we get that pineal gland, fired up and ready to go. So I think that's a really important piece. And then just beginning to take stock of their food intake. How
Yep.
are you feeding yourself? And I love to educate people around the timing of your food and the balance, the proteins and the carbs and the fibers, and creating ambiance. Again, I was very underwhelmed with my undergraduate degree, with the exception that part of it was the home economics division. So we had to cook from day one when I was in undergraduate school and create beauty around food. And so even when people are reading alone, I want them to create a beautiful table and a beautiful plate for themselves because you deserve it. And then you just start to feel that actually feels good. I actually really enjoyed that. I liked that. So
Oh, so two great points Julie just made. And it's interesting because she started with sleep. And how many people I hear, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'm like, well, you're going to die sooner if you don't start getting some sleep. That's what I want to say. And number two is creating the atmosphere for your experiences, especially when we're eating and not, I'm really trying not to scroll on my phone when I eat and really be aware of like how this is giving me nutrients and it really enjoying the meal. And I know I've heard from many people, Julie, because we saw you and me at lunch because I want to come over and you can cook for me. But I've
yeah,
heard how amazing your meals are. But I love that is to create that beautiful space to nourish yourself. And I don't think many people do that. And I don't. And I love that. I do try to get flowers on my table every week because it makes me happy. And I think of like Oprah Winfrey, and she said, what are you saving it for? When we have the nice jewelry or we have the nice purse or the nice shoes, but we don't want to wear them because we'll ruin them. But what are we saving it for? Because we may not be here tomorrow. And
that's right.
that kind of comes to mind when you said that. So Julie, let's talk a little bit more about nutrition because I know so many of my clients struggle with this part because there's so many mixed messages about diets and all the things. So where would you start if you have a client coming to you and they have no idea if they're eating properly or what to eat? And I know it's going to be different, but if there's kind of like a general rule.
Yeah. So the first thing is I like to meet people where they're at. Some people are already into sort of the organic world. Other people are so far removed from it. So depending on where someone is, I'll begin there. So if someone is eating a lot of fast foods, we want to really look at making sure that you're getting some proteins along with fiber dense carbohydrates. I have the fiber dense carbohydrate conversation every day. And then we also need to understand that there's a lot of marketing that goes into what we call, healthy carbs versus unhealthy carbs. So some of that is around that education. But the first place to start is to make sure you're getting some protein along with some carbohydrate at each of your meals. And you can start to taper off your carbs maybe later in the day. Trying to get people to not eat after dinner. If you feel like you want to have a little bit of a sweet ending after dinner, do it at the end of the dinner, not later in the evening. So getting people to get that 13 hours or so off between dinner and breakfast the next day. And then, begin with some of those particular steps. For some folks, I might even say, let's just focus on breakfast, because the rest of the day, they may not be ready to take on the rest of the day. So everyone's really an individual when it comes to that.
Yeah, but they're good overall tips. Is number one, trying to not eliminate, let's be realistic, right? Moderate the fast foods, the junk foods, the foods you can't pronounce. Intermittent fasting and adding protein at every meal are pretty basic, I would say, for everyone, right?
Yeah.
And then it's going to depend on like gut health and all the different things. Like I can't eat broccoli or rice or nightshades because they kill my gut, but they're healthy. I looked at the top 5 foods for cancer and I can only eat 2 of them because the other ones, they bother my stomach so much. So can you talk a little bit about gut health?
Yeah. So in terms of gut health, I mean, I think one of the things that I talk about every day in my work is asking people if they're pooping every day. So if you're not having a bowel movement every day, there is something wrong. And so that's number one, is really trying to make sure that we get people so that they are eliminating on a daily basis. And especially for women, because if you are not, what happens is those estrogens that get bound up, they start to get released again and then there's a reuptake into the body that can create more brain fog. And, we hear around midlife that women are experiencing a lot of brain fog. Well, some of that is what we call deconjugated estrogens that get back reabsorbed into the body. So, that's definitely something that I do. I have people look at labels to make sure that there aren't too many gums listed: cellulose gum, guar gum, carrageenan gum, all these different things. The more you have gums in there, the more it's going to gum up your gut. So that's an important one as well.
That's so good.
Yeah. And the other piece is not everybody tolerates raw vegetables. You might very well be that, cooking something is going to be a little bit easier on your overall digestion. So those are important things to think about.
I just shared in my R.E.A.L Wellness group yesterday. It was a visual from Dr. Mark Hyman about the gums. Yep. Because a lot of people are drinking these pure protein drinks and and protein bars. And I used to do a lot of protein bars like years ago and had tons of gut issues. But that's really interesting because you really made that simple. The gums, when you see the cellulose, the carrageenan, is like that's what he shared. Yeah. And it makes you think about what's happening in your gut. Everything is getting stuck. Yes, you made some great points. And the whole estrogen buildup is really interesting because, again, this is something that I think a lot of women struggle with, having daily bowel movements. And, maybe because they're not eating the right foods. I also have learned medicine. Like I have trouble sleeping some nights. I might take like a Motrin PM, maybe once in a blue moon. It always affects the next morning not being able to go. And I think that's another one, how medicines can affect our gut.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's something else when you meet with a provider to really talk about what's going on in your body, and the gut health is crucial because of that gut-brain connection.
Absolutely. And I will always cross-reference. I take a look at what medications somebody is on. And then also, even in terms of making supplement recommendations, is I'm always looking at, is this supplement going to interact with this particular medication? So, a lot of people say, oh, I take ashwagandha or I take L-theanine or whatever. You really do need to look at those cross-references because sometimes it's contraindicated.
Yeah, and that's not a conversation that a lot of providers have time for or think to ask. No. And so that's why it's nice to bring in a health coach or someone like Julie that can really sit and go over all of that. And I've worked with clients before that didn't realize even to ask for vitamin D, like their vitamin D to be tested, and how that has a correlation with progesterone. And so all of these things come into play. And if you don't sit with someone and really dig deep, you're going to continue to live in that, okay, not feeling great state. But I always say, when you feel good, you feel good. And so many people don't realize that they're not living in that, I don't want to say superior like health, but once you get out of that fog and you feel better, you can't believe that you accepted feeling crappy for so long.
Sure. Yeah. You were existing because that was your norm. Yeah. Existing was your norm.
Yeah. Maybe, can you think of maybe a recent patient you worked with, Julie, maybe just like a quick success story on what they felt like and working with you, what that is like now?
Yeah, I mean, I have one person right now that just over the last month. So some of the things that I do is, even though most of it is telehealth at this point in time, I'm always looking at someone's eyes. I'm looking at their skin color, the brightness, whatever kind of joy and energy they're actually bringing to the session. And this woman, who I'm still in process with now, significant change from week number 1. We're on week number 4. I said, there's just a buoyancy. There's a joy. And she goes, I feel it. I feel it. I even pulled out my sewing machine and I'm sewing and I'm doing things that I really enjoyed doing. And I even tried some of those, those menus that you sent over, and I hate to cook. And I'm like, wow, So it is such a joy to see those things happen. Now, conversely, I also work with a lot of people that have chronic, complex challenges. I mentioned this at the HSSBN meeting this morning, is that recently I've been referred a lot of people that have long COVID, mast cell activation syndrome, POTS, dysautonomia. These are now becoming more common buzzword terms, but they're very chronic and they affect almost every system of our body. They're going to be a long-term commitment. And so part of it is also letting people know, like, this is not going to turn overnight. This is going to be a process. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's so key, is we live in a society where everything's instant.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so preparing a client right at the beginning, I'm working with someone right now, like, it's going to take time. This did not happen overnight. It's years of habits or neglecting yourself that has led to this. So it's going to take a while to unpeel and reverse and really build back up in a different way. So that's a really good point you made, Julie. Yeah. So as we wrap this up, Julie, what is one piece of advice you could give to our listeners on maybe just overall health, or maybe like some words of wisdom from you?
Start your day with some uplifting reading, whether that's spiritual text or Oprah Winfrey. I have her Super Soul Sunday book, where you just read something that's actually of positivity for you. Take a few moments to reflect. How would I like to bring my day forth? What is it that I want to bring into the world here today? And then spend a few minutes journaling. And I think that's a great way to start your day off in the morning, because that's going to set the stage for the rest of the day.
That's so good. And I really can notice the days when I start like that, and the days that I just get out of bed and I'm like, it's your attitude towards the day. So that is awesome advice. So Julie, how can everyone connect with you? And I will also share in the comments, but if they want to connect with you and learn more about you or how you can support them, where can they go?
Yeah, very easy. My website is juliefreeman.net. There's all different ways to be able to connect with me on there, and I am very connectable. So I will answer the cell phone, the text, the email, whatever. But that's the best way to get in touch with me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Julie. I know you're a busy lady, and I'm looking forward to that meal with you. And again, thank you everyone for tuning in. If this podcast resonated with you and you want to share it with a friend or comment, we would love to hear from you. So until next time, keeping it real, take care of yourself.
Thanks, Jess. Have a good day.